Hello! Have you ever faced challenges so immense they seemed insurmountable or had to fight against injustices that felt overwhelming? Today, we bring you a powerful story of overcoming adversity and seeking justice. Discover the journey of Catalina, a determined woman who faced the greatest hardships to clear her name and protect her son. This video isn't just about an emotional story, it's about strength, courage, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Have you ever felt like life was against you? Have you faced situations where the only option was to fight, even when everything seemed lost? Share your experiences of overcoming challenges with us in the comments. We are here to inspire and be inspired. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one and not miss any details of the exciting next chapter. Sylvia woke up early, as usual. Her luxurious room was surrounded by valuable artworks and imported furniture. She put on a silk robe and walked to the mirror, admiring herself with satisfaction and appreciating her own beauty. Her morning routine was meticulous, involving various beauty treatments and personal care that consumed hours of her day. While Sylvia lost herself in narcissistic thoughts, Catalina was already on her way to the mansion, carrying a simple backpack with her cleaning supplies. Catalina, on the other hand, lived in a small apartment on the outskirts of Modesto. She woke up before dawn to prepare breakfast for her son Juan and take him to school, where she kissed him on the forehead before he went in. Then, Catalina faced the crowded bus to work, always punctual despite the difficulties. Catalina entered through the back door of the mansion, as she did every day. The mansion's kitchen was impeccable, but Catalina knew there was still a lot of work ahead. As she prepared her cleaning products, she heard Sylvia's authoritative and impatient voice echo through the house. "Come here immediately. I want you to clean all the windows today and vacuum the carpets well. Last time they were full of dust," said Sylvia with disdain. "Certainly, Mrs. Sylvia. I'll start right away," replied Catalina, maintaining a polite smile despite her fatigue and slight nervousness. Catalina began her tasks while Sylvia busied herself on the phone with her friend Marcella, discussing the details of an upcoming party. Sylvia was excited, not only about the event itself, but also about the opportunity to display her wealth and social status. "You'll love the decor, Marcella. I hired the best designers in town, and the buffet is absolutely divine," she said excitedly. Meanwhile, Sylvia completely ignored Catalina's presence, who was kneeling on the floor, working hard to meticulously clean every corner of the house. As Catalina busied herself with her daily tasks, her mind wandered to Juan and how she could provide a better life for him. She had dreams, despite the circumstances that often seemed insurmountable, but her quiet determination was a constant force. During a brief lunch break, Catalina sat in the kitchen savoring a simple sandwich brought from home. In these moments of tranquility, she reflected on her life and her often hidden talents due to the difficulties she faced. Meanwhile, Sylvia was immersed in the preparations for her party, always focused on herself and the impression she would make on others. "You shouldn't be sitting now, Catalina. The party is close, and this house needs to be perfect," said Sylvia as she entered the kitchen and found Catalina sitting. "Excuse me, ma'am. I was just finishing my lunch." "I'll get back to work," Catalina replied quickly, standing up and putting away her sandwich. Sylvia, for her part, leafed through a catalog of extravagant decorations for her birthday party, determined to make the event the most luxurious of the year. However, she was also busy with another thought: how could she humiliate Catalina in an unforgettable way? Sylvia called Catalina to the living room with an authoritative tone. "Catalina, come here. I need to talk to you," said Sylvia, without taking her eyes off the catalog. Catalina entered the room, carefully drying her hands on her apron, always ready for another task, but Sylvia's tone made her nervous. Sylvia looked at Catalina with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, increasing Catalina's discomfort. "Yes, Mrs. Sylvia?" Catalina asked, waiting for the next instruction. "I'm planning my birthday party, and I've decided that you and your son Juan are invited. I want you to be there," Sylvia commented with a malicious gleam in her eyes. Catalina was surprised by the invitation. She had never been invited to anything beyond her usual tasks in the house. She looked suspiciously at Sylvia, trying to understand her true intentions. "Madam, I don't know if it would be appropriate. Juan and I don't have proper clothes for a party like this," said Catalina. Sylvia shook her head, smiling as if she were being generous. "Don't worry about that, Catalina. I'm sure you can figure it out. I want you there. After all, you are part of my life in a way, aren't you?" Catalina had no choice but to accept. She knew that refusing the invitation could cause problems at work, and she didn't want to disappoint Juan, who would be excited about the idea of going to a party. Satisfied with Catalina's reaction, Sylvia turned her attention back to the catalog, planning the final details of the party in the following days. Meanwhile, Catalina couldn't get the strange invitation out of her head. She confided her worries to a friend on the bus, who encouraged her to take advantage of the opportunity. Although still suspicious, Catalina decided she would do her best to ensure that she and Juan were present and prepared for the occasion. Meanwhile, Sylvia was preparing for the party with even more enthusiasm, eager to see her plan of humiliation in action. "Mom, are we really going to a party?" asked Juan, excited, helping Catalina choose their best clothes. "Yes, son. Let's make the most of it," she replied. The day of the party arrived, and Sylvia was ecstatic. The house was opulently decorated with twinkling lights, exotic flowers, and a buffet table that looked like it came out of a palace. Guests began to arrive, each more elegant than the last, circulating and praising the impeccable decor and party planning. Catalina and Juan arrived later, dressed in their best clothes, which, although simple, were clean and well cared for. As soon as all eyes turned to them, some guests began to whisper among themselves, surprised to see the cleaner and her son at the party. Juan, noticing the reaction of the guests, approached with a radiant smile, gently taking Catalina's arm and guiding her. "Catalina, I'm glad you came. Come, let me introduce you to my friends," said Sylvia. Catalina tried to maintain her composure, but she felt out of place. Juan, on the other hand, was dazzled by the party. Sylvia made a point of introducing them to everyone, always highlighting the unexpected presence of the cleaner and her son. It was evident that Sylvia was trying to make Catalina feel uncomfortable, despite the superficial appearance of happiness. Catalina was aware of the growing tension in the room but tried to keep her composure. She forced herself to smile, even though her heart was racing and her hands were starting to sweat. The music began to play, and Sylvia, with a challenging look, called everyone's attention to Catalina. "Catalina, please come here and show us your talent," she said with a smile that barely concealed her malice. Juan looked at his mother with surprise and admiration. He knew how much music meant to Catalina, but he also understood the embarrassment she was feeling at that moment. Catalina felt like she was in a nightmare, completely exposed in front of all of Sylvia's guests. The room fell silent, all eyes on Catalina, who was paralyzed with shock and embarrassment. Juan, sensing his mother's tension, squeezed her hand firmly, offering silent comfort. He knew Catalina didn't want to be the center of attention in such a humiliating way planned by Sylvia. Catalina looked at Sylvia, struggling to find words, but Sylvia insisted with a tone of command disguised as gentleness. "Come on, show us what you can do." Catalina's heart was racing. She looked around, searching for an escape, but all eyes were on her. It was a moment of decision, to give in to Sylvia's pressure or find a way to preserve her dignity. Then, Catalina closed her eyes and began to sing. For a moment, she left that room, as if she had been transported to another world, a world where she was absolute. Sylvia, who expected laughter and ridicule, was shocked to see the guests' reactions. One by one, they were completely absorbed in Catalina's beautiful and emotional performance. Her soft, melodious voice filled the room, touching the hearts of those present in a way Sylvia hadn't expected. As Catalina sang, one looked at his mother with pride, knowing she was overcoming her fears and shining in front of everyone. The guests, initially curious, were now enchanted, each note drawing them deeper into the music. Catalina sang with undeniable passion and emotion, her voice resonating in the hearts of those listening, creating a magical moment at the party Sylvia had planned to humiliate her. The murmurs ceased, and a respectful silence filled the room. When Catalina finished, there was a pause before warm applause filled the space. Sylvia, unable to hide her surprise and frustration, forced a tense smile as the guests praised Catalina for her talent and the emotion she brought to the party. One hugged his mother proudly, knowing she had shown everyone not just her voice, but her inner strength and dignity. Despite initially feeling uncomfortable with the situation set up by Sylvia, Catalina felt a wave of gratification and relief for having overcome the challenge with grace and courage. As the guests continued to praise Catalina, Sylvia watched with a mixture of emotions. Her plan for humiliation had failed spectacularly, revealing more about her character than about Catalina. One of the guests, moved by the beauty of Catalina's music, approached at the end of the performance. "You have an incredible talent, young lady," he exclaimed. Among those present was Alejandro, an elegant middle-aged man who stood out for his confident demeanor. As the commotion died down, he approached Catalina. "My name is Alejandro. I'm involved in the music industry and would like to talk to you about an opportunity," said Alejandro, extending his hand to Catalina. She looked at Alejandro, still a bit stunned, feeling a whirlwind of emotions, surprise, gratitude, but also a shadow of distrust, knowing all this was happening because of Sylvia's plan of humiliation. On the other hand, Sylvia tried to hide her anger with a forced smile. "Of course, Catalina. You deserve this. Come, let's talk to Alejandro," intervened Sylvia, leading Catalina and Alejandro to a quieter room where they could talk. Alejandro praised Catalina's voice and spoke about how he could help her launch a music career. Catalina, still surprised by the sudden change in her fortune, began to feel a hope she hadn't felt in a long time. "I don't know what to say. Thank you, Mr. Alejandro. I never imagined something like this could happen to me. You have a rare talent, and it deserves to be seen and heard by everyone," Alejandro replied, smiling. Meanwhile, Sylvia, seeing her plan unravel, tried miserably to pull herself together. She knew she needed to keep up appearances, but inside she was seething with rage. Catalina, on the other hand, felt a sense of victory. For the first time in a long time, something good was happening in her life, all thanks to her own talent, which Sylvia had tried to use against her. As the party continued, Catalina and Juan left with newfound admiration from the guests. Sylvia's plan for humiliation had turned into a moment of triumph for Catalina. But Sylvia was already planning her next move, determined to regain control and ruin Catalina's life once and for all. "Let's go home, Juan. It's been a long night," said Catalina, taking her son's hand. "Mom, you were amazing. I'm so proud of you," Juan replied, beaming. As they said their goodbyes to the guests and walked towards the exit, Catalina felt a weight lifted from her shoulders. She knew there were still challenges ahead, but now she had a renewed sense of hope and determination to face them, especially with Sylvia around. But for now, Catalina had something no one could take away from her: her dignity and her son's love, and perhaps a new opportunity for a better future. The morning after the party, everything was different for Catalina. She woke up with a sense of lightness and hope. Her phone, usually silent, was buzzing incessantly with messages and calls. Alejandro, the music producer, had left several voice messages, eager to schedule a meeting and discuss the details of a contract. "I can't believe what's happening. Mom, what's wrong? Why is your phone ringing so much?" asked Juan, curious. Catalina responded with an uncertain but hopeful smile. "I think it's because of the party last night, Juan. It seems Mr. Alejandro wants to help me sing for more people." In the following days, Catalina met several times with Alejandro and was introduced to other professionals in the music industry. Soon, she was rehearsing for her first public performances. Initially, the events were modest, but they quickly began to grow in size and importance. Catalina felt like she was in a dream but knew she had to stay grounded. "Mom, are you singing again tonight?" Juan asked, eager. "Yes, dear, and you're coming with me. We'll go to all the places and events together," Catalina replied. As her career blossomed, Catalina managed to move to a better apartment where Juan had his own room and space to play. Despite the new fame and changes, Catalina maintained her humility and gratitude. "No matter where we go, Juan, everything we do is for our future, but we will always be the same people," said Catalina, trying to instill important values in her son. As Catalina's career gained more prominence, Sylvia's envy grew. Catalina noticed the looks and whispers when she crossed paths with Sylvia on the street or at social events. Sylvia, on the other hand, fumed with rage at the meteoric rise of someone she considered inferior. The tension between the two was palpable, and everyone around could sense that something big was about to happen. Sylvia couldn't sleep. Each new success of Catalina was a stab at her pride. She paced nervously around the house, unable to understand how her plan for humiliation had turned into the catapult for Catalina's success. "This can't go on like this. She can't be victorious," Sylvia murmured to herself, determined to find a way to undermine Catalina and regain what she considered hers: control over the situation. Sylvia smiled malevolently as she held the dossier in her hands. Finally, she had what she needed to destroy Catalina once and for all. It was late at night when Sylvia began to plot. She knew she had to act carefully to ensure everything went as planned. The next day, she called a trusted lawyer and began discussing the next steps. Meanwhile, Catalina was busy with her musical commitments and rehearsals for her upcoming performances. She was happy with her career's progress, and Juan's continued support kept her motivated. However, Catalina began to notice something was wrong. Her interactions with Sylvia became more tense, and she noticed furtive glances and sarcastic comments that did not go unnoticed. One sunny afternoon, as Catalina was leaving a rehearsal, she was approached by a journalist who showed her a copy of an article that was about to be published. The headline read, "Catalina, the truth behind the success." The article accused her of a jewelry theft that occurred years ago, alleging that evidence pointed to her guilt, but the case was dismissed due to a lack of concrete evidence. Catalina felt her world collapse as she read the defamatory words. She knew this was Sylvia's doing. Shocked and devastated, Catalina began receiving calls from journalists and curious people, all wanting to know her side of the story. She was being dragged into a scandal that threatened not only her career but also her reputation and her relationship with her son. Meanwhile, Sylvia watched from afar, satisfied with the chaos she had caused. She didn't expect Catalina to be able to recover this time. Determined to see her rival defeated, Sylvia planned to keep pressing until Catalina was completely destroyed. Now, Catalina faced a battle not only for her future in music but also for her dignity and her son's trust. Catalina felt her heart tighten as she listened to Alejandro's response. The feeling of helplessness flooded her, knowing her career was crumbling under false accusations. She hung up the phone with a lump in her throat, unable to hold back the tears that started to stream down her face. "What are we going to do now, Mom?" Juan asked, hugging her tightly. Catalina tried to smile to calm him, but her eyes betrayed the pain she felt. "We're going to face this together, my love. We'll prove the truth, no matter what happens." Meanwhile, Sylvia reveled in the destruction she had caused. She monitored every repercussion on social media and in the media, taking advantage of the negative narrative she had created. Her phone didn't stop ringing with calls from friends and acquaintances congratulating her for exposing the truth about Catalina. "You did a fantastic job, Sylvia. Catalina deserves to pay for what she did," commented Marcella, satisfied with the success of the plan. Sylvia smiled coldly, but inside she felt a pang of uncertainty. Despite managing to tarnish Catalina's reputation, a part of her wondered if she had gone too far. As days passed, Catalina and Juan faced growing isolation. People who once approached them with smiles now averted their gaze or murmured when they passed by. Their lives had turned into a public nightmare, fueled by Sylvia's lies. Determined to clear her name, Catalina began gathering evidence to prove her innocence. She hired an experienced lawyer and started reviewing every detail of the theft case that had unjustly marked her life. Meanwhile, Juan became her pillar of support, always by her side, encouraging her not to give up. "We'll overcome this, Mom. I know you didn't do anything wrong," Juan repeated with determination, reminding her of the love and trust he had in her. As the legal battle intensified behind the scenes, Sylvia continued her campaign to keep Catalina in obscurity. She invested in more interviews and articles that reinforced the accusations against Catalina, manipulating public opinion in her favor. But Catalina didn't give up. She appeared on television programs and interviews, telling her story with sincerity and courage. Despite the difficulties, some people began to question the veracity of Sylvia's accusations, realizing there might be more to the story than the version of a bitter woman. Each sleepless night, Catalina delved into old documents, determined to uncover the truth behind Sylvia's manipulations. Each new discovery, no matter how small, was a ray of hope amid the storm her life had become. Meanwhile, Sylvia continued her relentless campaign to smear Catalina's name. She took advantage of every opportunity to reinforce her accusations, manipulating public opinion through interviews, articles, and social media posts. For Catalina, each step forward seemed followed by 2 steps back. How can she be so cruel? Catalina wondered, frustrated by Sylvia's persistence in destroying her. But she knew she couldn't afford to falter. Juan depended on her more than ever, and the promise she made to herself to clear her name still burned inside her. Finally, Catalina had an idea. She decided to arrange an exclusive interview with a respected journalist. It was her chance to tell her story honestly and directly, hoping the public would understand the truth behind the false accusations. During the interview, Catalina opened her heart. She spoke openly about the theft accusation that almost destroyed her life. "I was falsely accused. The evidence disappeared because I was innocent. I never stole anything," Catalina said, fighting back tears as she faced the camera with determination. The interview was a moment of vulnerability and courage for Catalina. However, shortly after the broadcast, Sylvia made her move. She released new documents and manipulated testimonies, reinforcing her narrative that Catalina was a thief. Public opinion, already divided, began to tilt against Catalina again. Catalina felt the weight of disappointment as the support she hoped to gain disappeared in the face of Sylvia's persistent attacks. Social media filled with cruel comments and unfounded accusations, fueled by Sylvia's influence and the media machine she controlled. "Mom, what's happening?" Juan asked, sensing the growing tension at home. Catalina hugged Juan tightly, trying to hide her own anguish. "Don't worry, son. We'll find a way to prove the truth," she replied with determination, despite the uncertainty consuming her. For Catalina, defending herself seemed like an impossible battle against Sylvia's influence and unlimited resources. Every effort to clear her name was thwarted by new obstacles, but she refused to give up. Determined to turn the tide, Catalina began investigating on her own. She reviewed old documents, revisited witnesses, and contacted people who might have relevant information about the theft incident. Each new lead was a small step toward the truth she longed for. "I will prove my innocence, no matter what it takes," Catalina murmured to herself as she spent sleepless nights, absorbed in the search for justice that her life and her son's depended on. "Laura, I need you to contact the journalists who were bribed by Sylvia. We're going to expose this fraud publicly," declared Catalina, looking intently at her friends. Ricardo nodded, grabbing his phone to start making the necessary contacts. Laura, with her characteristic determination, began drafting a plan to release the information strategically, ensuring maximum impact in the media. Meanwhile, Catalina focused on preparing for the moment she would reveal the truth to the public. She knew every step was crucial, her reputation and future were at stake. In the following days, Catalina's team worked tirelessly to gather all the necessary evidence. Each document and testimony reinforced the case against Sylvia. Finally, the day arrived when Catalina was ready to face Sylvia head-on. An exclusive interview was scheduled with one of the country's leading television programs. Catalina sat in front of the cameras, took a deep breath to control her nerves, and began to tell her side of the story. "I'm here today to clarify a series of serious accusations made against me," Catalina began firmly. "I was a victim of a cruel and meticulously planned defamation campaign by Sylvia. She bribed people to spread lies about my character, but today I bring concrete evidence that exposes this entire farce." During the interview, Catalina presented documents revealing Sylvia's bribes, manipulated financial records, and testimonies from witnesses confirming the truth. With each revelation, public outrage against Sylvia grew. Social media flooded with messages of support for Catalina, while Sylvia's reputation began to crumble. Watching from her mansion, Sylvia realized she had underestimated Catalina's determination. Her meticulous plan to destroy her rival's reputation was now backfiring. The media began investigating the accusations against Sylvia, further amplifying the negative exposure. In the following days, the truth prevailed. Sylvia was forced to face the consequences of her actions, facing legal charges for bribery and fraud. Meanwhile, Catalina found not only justice, but also the revival of her career and reputation. With continuous support from her friends and the public, Catalina rebuilt her life and name. She learned that sometimes the hardest battle is the one you don't choose, but that defines who you are. In the end, her courage and determination triumphed over injustice. "Laura, we need to ensure this story is told correctly," said Catalina as she reviewed documents with Ricardo. "Catalina, we have enough evidence to expose Sylvia, but we must be careful with how we release it. She still has a lot of power and influence," warned Ricardo. "I know, Ricardo, but we can't wait any longer. Let's expose everything in a public event where everyone can see the truth once and for all," Catalina decided, feeling her determination grow. With everything prepared, Catalina felt ready for the big reveal. She knew this was her final opportunity to clear her name and secure a better future for herself and Juan. The plan was in motion, and Sylvia's downfall was imminent. On the appointed day, the room was packed with reporters and cameras, all eager to hear what Catalina had to say. With Laura and Ricardo's help, Catalina took the stage with the evidence in hand. "Good evening, everyone. I know this is a charity event, but I need your attention for a moment," Catalina began. Sylvia, realizing what was about to happen, tried to maintain her composure. She knew Catalina was there to confront her, but didn't know how much evidence she had. Catalina took a deep breath and began to expose the truth. "I've received threats in recent weeks. At first, I thought they were just from cruel people, but soon I discovered these threats came from a very specific source," she said as Ricardo distributed copies of the threatening messages and emails to the press present. The journalists began reading the messages, and a murmur of surprise swept through the room. "These messages said I didn't belong in your circle, that I was just a cleaner and should never have been in your place. These threats were humiliating and terrifying," Catalina continued as images of the messages were projected on a giant screen. Sylvia began to sweat but kept her artificial smile, trying to act as if nothing was wrong. Catalina then presented the most damning evidence. "I investigated the source of these threats and discovered they were all linked to the same person. Sylvia, you used your power and influence to try to destroy my life. Here are the records of the bank transfers you made to pay witnesses and bribe journalists. And here's the proof that you were responsible for all the anonymous threats I received," said Catalina, holding up an envelope with documents. Ricardo began distributing this evidence to the reporters, who started taking photos and making notes frantically. Sylvia's wealthy ex-friends, surprised by the revelations, began murmuring among themselves. "This can't be true. This is all fabricated. Catalina is lying," Sylvia exclaimed, desperately trying to maintain control. But it was too late. Catalina had gathered conclusive evidence that Sylvia was responsible for all the anonymous threats. The police, who were present, began acting on the evidence presented, and the tense atmosphere in the event hall was palpable. At this point, at Ricardo's request, he began approaching Sylvia. "Sylvia Rodriguez, you're under arrest for bribery, threats, and financial fraud. You have the right to remain silent," declared one of the officers as he handcuffed Sylvia. The room fell completely silent as the image of Sylvia being taken away by the police was broadcast live by the reporters present. Catalina, now free from the weight of accusations and threats, felt a wave of relief. "Thank you all for listening to the truth. I just wanted to clear my name and protect my son. Today, justice was served," said Catalina, with tears of gratitude in her eyes. The applause began timidly but soon turned into a standing ovation of support for Catalina. She stepped off the stage and was embraced by Laura and Ricardo, who were visibly moved. "You did it, Catalina. Justice has finally been served," Laura said, holding Catalina's hands. "Yes, we did it together. Now we can start anew, free from all this fear and oppression, Catalina replied, finally feeling at peace after confronting Sylvia. With the conflict resolved, Catalina triumphed over Sylvia, exposing her true nature for all to see and reclaiming her dignity. Now, she could move forward with her head held high, knowing she had fought and won. The media quickly shifted their focus to Catalina's story of resilience, and she began receiving a wave of public support. People were moved by her courage and determination in the face of so many adversities. Catalina's music career, which seemed destroyed by Sylvia's lies, flourished again with Alejandro's help. They began working on new musical projects, and the public's response to each performance was overwhelmingly positive. Catalina felt she was finally reaping the rewards of all her effort and talent. Meanwhile, Sylvia's life was in ruins. She was convicted of fraud, bribery, and the threats she made against Catalina. Her financial empire collapsed, and with it, the life of opulence Sylvia had built. Her former wealthy friends abandoned her, and she found herself alone, paying for the crimes she committed. The rich woman who humiliated her maid saw everything around her crumble, feeling the weight of the consequences of her actions. On the other hand, Catalina felt finally free. Justice had been served, and she could move forward, knowing she had the courage and integrity to face any challenge the future held. With her head held high and the conviction that justice prevailed, Catalina's name was cleared, and she regained her place in the public's heart. Her story became an example of self-improvement and resilience. Catalina and Juan lived happily, surrounded by the support of loyal friends like Laura and Ricardo. Catalina knew her journey hadn't been easy, but each challenge made her stronger. Now, she could finally enjoy the success and happiness she so deserved, knowing she had faced her trials with courage and integrity. Which character did you admire most in Catalina's journey, Laura, Ricardo, or Juan himself? Comment below. Also, what other story of overcoming injustice would you like to hear on our channel? Leave your suggestions in the comments. Don't miss the next video for more inspiring stories. Subscribe now and turn on notifications so you don't miss anything.